Sometimes we get discouraged and feel our work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit, the spirit of our coming together in a place like this, revives our soul again. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. The Apollo Theater, WNYC, and March On proudly present A Burning House, MLK, and the American Experiment. I'm Terrence McKnight. And I'll serve as your master of ceremony for today's program. We ask that you share your experiences with the world using the hashtag WNYCMLK. Now it's my pleasure to bring to the stage, please welcome to the stage, the executive producer for the Apollo Theater, executive director, Ms. Camilla Forbes.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Apollo, everybody. Welcome to the Apollo. And thank you, Terrence. It's always a special time on MLK Day to present in partnership this program. We're so pleased to be here today, on a day also where we received some really exciting news that most of you might have heard about Marcus Garvey's pardon. It's about time. But it's right on time. He was today, absolutely. President Joe Biden pardoned Marcus Garvey posthumously. Marcus, a son of Harlem and Jamaica like myself. But we are so pleased to welcome you this afternoon because we are here to remember and celebrate and reflect on the joyfulness of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the legacy he's left behind. Brenda William Butts and WNYC committed to presenting this program 19 years ago. And this is a partnership that Apollo has been a part of for well over 13 years and is a major staple of our own community programming. Partnering on this event with WNYC in collaboration with the March On Washington Film Festival has always been a highlight of our year. So today, we meditate on Dr. King at a time such as this. Tomorrow's inauguration ushers in a new age in our country. While we don't know the future, we do know that we will need the blueprint of the civil rights movement and subsequent movements for justice, freedom, and human rights even more. Buckle up, everyone. So as I listened to Dr. King's speeches, I was struck once again by how we are using the same exact language in 2025 that King, Young, Abernathy, and others used in 1957, over 68 years ago. And on one hand, I can be angered, outraged, and saddened by this reality. But on the other hand, I'm convicted to deepen our own resolve even further and recommit the work of social justice and equality. The Apollo recognizes and works inside of movement work in the historical sense, as well as the movements of performers, of writers, of thought leaders that we present here on this very stage. We continue to tell the stories of struggle, triumph, and joy through music, dance, film, literature, and visual interpretation through all of our 4 stages, not only here in the historic building, but also next door at the Victoria. And what we learn from these brilliant creatives and intellectuals night after night is that we can each change the world by changing the parts that we occupy. It's all up to how we show up in it. Dr. King showed up for us over and over again. So I encourage all of us to show up. The dream, like the blueprint, is not ours alone. It is for future generations to finally win the fight for justice and equality. So with that being said, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Ms. Issa Bey, Executive Director of March On, formerly March On Washington Film Festival, and please enjoy the program.
Giving praise to the source of all life and honor to the 7 directions, north, south, east, west, above, below and within, and to the cycle of life of African ancestored peoples, those who have gone on before, those living, and those yet to be born. Because they were, we are. Because we are, they will be. I rejoiced when I heard them say, "Let us go into the Apollo Theater, this cathedral of culture." The title of today's program was taken from a conversation between Dr. King and his good friend, Harry Belafonte, when King said, "I have come to believe that we are integrating into a burning house." When James Baldwin wrote The Fire Next Time, he took his title from an old spiritual, "God sent Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time." It referred to the flood that destroyed the known world and the promise that water would not again be used as the means of destruction. These fiery metaphors have resonance today. Many anticipate this new administration with feverish foreboding. Nations are engulfed in war. Large sections of the country are consumed by wildfires. However, other fire references come to mind as signposts and inspiration. In Buddhism, the burning house refers to the unsafe nature and suffering of human existence, and to the need to be liberated and enlightened. It says we must do the rigorous inner work toward individual and collective enlightenment. That reminds me of Dr. King's beloved community. The 5 elements of the Chinese zodiac are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. They exist in a cycle, one creating or controlling the next. Wood fuels fire, which burns and creates earth, which forms metal, which channels the waters that nourish the planet, and so on. The cone of the jack pine tree has a thick exterior covered in resin. During a wildfire, the intense heat melts that resin. Then the cones burst open and release their seeds. The rich, scorched earth becomes the perfect womb for the next generation of forest to be born. Life to death to life. Yes, we are in a burning house. We are on a burning planet. The political and environmental fires are never more clearly intertwined as now. As a result, fear, cynicism, and despair become consuming and more addictive. But since what we focus on expands, do we dare raise our sights to envision and create a present worthy of our forebears' sacrifices? Then can we rise phoenix-like from the ashes into a new world of our own making, one that is luminous, beautiful, strong, and lasting. Thank you. And now it is my honor to welcome the President and CEO of New York Public Radio, LaFontaine Oliver.
Thank you, Isasara. It is an honor to be here on this historic Apollo stage at the tail end of the venerated institution's 90th birthday year, and as the festivities for WNYC's centennial continue to roll on. And it's so great to be in a room full of so many passionate members and our shared community. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Now, every January, as the new year comes into focus, this phenomenal event offers us a chance to reflect on the many ways that our mission at WNYC to make the mind more curious, the heart more open, and the spirit more joyful works to further the vision of a just and peaceful society that Dr. King envisioned for all of us, one that embraces the kaleidoscopic beauty of our multiracial, multi-perspective, many-tongued nation and city. Americans certainly were not living in that society at the time when Dr. King and Harry Belafonte had the conversation that inspired today's theme, A Burning House, MLK and the American Experiment. And as we know, our nation has not yet fully achieved that vision. Indeed, we find ourselves at a time of great division and discord, a time when the threat of violence feels real and tangible, when so many around us are giving up on the pursuit of truth and basic fact or working actively to propose it. In other words, we're living in a moment that feels like the heat is turned up, all the way up, in a moment when it's most charged and indeed feels like the house is on fire. So, where does that leave us? I'm grateful to the artists and the thinkers with us today who will help us tackle that question from many different angles. For me and the incredible team I work with at WNYC, it leads us to double down on the profound and civic mandate that we shoulder with pride to provide rigorous, fact-based journalism that uncovers corruption and shines a light on inequity and oppression in any form. This is what we do every day on WNYC, on our digital news site, Gothamist, and on our classical music platform, WQXR. And we couldn't do it without the community of listeners, readers, and members who support our work every single day. So, I want to give a big shout out to everyone who is already a part of the New York Public Radio community, and an invitation to join us for those who do not yet tune in. You can tune in on your dial at 93.9 FM and AM 20 and online at WNYC.org. Okay, we have a wonderful program coming up with some of New York Public Radio's great hosts serving as our guides. So get excited. We have Michael Hill, Janae Pierre, the incomparable Brian Lair, and of course, you've met him already, Mr. Terrence McKnight. But up next, it is an honor for me to pass things off to our Chief Diversity Officer, Brenda Williams, who co-founded this event 19 years ago and who soon will be moving on from New York Public Radio after nearly 3 decades of tireless service. That's right. Now, the scripture tells us that he who wishes to be first must be last in service to all, and I can tell you that Brenda embodies this. As I said to a group of senior staff members just about a week or so ago, she is a force of nature. Quite frankly, she is just different. And as we know, a difference, to be a difference, must make a difference. And Brenda has made a difference in our organization, in this community, and she has made a difference to me personally. Brenda, we are all better because you walked this path and you shared your brilliance with us. And today, I want to give you your flowers. Brenda, would you join me on stage? Brenda, thank you so much for everything. We love you, and we are going to miss you.
I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths because I'm getting emotional. Thank you, La Fontaine, for your kind words and your leadership. Good afternoon, everyone. Standing here on this historic Apollo stage, rich with the legacy of resilience, art, and activism, feels deeply fitting as I reflect on nearly 30 years at New York Public Radio.
This event, co-founded with Brian Lear 19 years ago, holds a special place in my heart. It has been one of the most meaningful chapters of my journey here. To Brian, thank you for being a colleague and an inspiration. Those who listen to Brian Lear's show already know how remarkable he is, but working alongside him is even better. From day one, we dreamed of honoring Dr. King's legacy in a way that challenges, uplifts, and unifies us. And here we are, 19 years later, doing just that. I also want to thank our incredible partners, the Apollo and March On, for helping us bring this event to life. Collaboration is the essence of what Dr. King stood for, and your partnership reminds us of that. Together, we've created some powerful events that feel like a warm family reunion, but also demands we take a hard look at our world and recommit ourselves to that work ahead. To Maxie Jackson, you have been an incredible colleague and a phenomenal content partner for 16 of these 19 years. From our early days at the Brooklyn Museum to where we stand now, what we have achieved is a testament to your passion, dedication, and brilliance. To Sophia Edmondson, my right hand for the past 6 years, thank you for your unwavering partnership. You've been a rock, a steady presence, and a fantastic producing partner for this event. I could not have done it without you. To all my colleagues who work at the station and on this event, I've been incredibly blessed to work alongside such talented, kind, and dedicated individuals. I carry so much gratitude in my heart for all of you. Reflecting on my time at New York Public Radio, I am grateful. I've worn many hats here, leading community engagement and audience development, and serving as our first ever DEI leader. Each role has taught me something new and deepened my belief in the power of connection and community. This chapter of my life has been a blessing, but as I step into what I like to call semi-retirement, because I'm not the sit still type, I do so with a full heart and a clear purpose to continue serving, mentoring, and building bridges, just as I have here. So before I go, I want to leave you with this Dr. King once said: faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Starting this event 19 years ago was one of those steps. And now, as I take another step into the next chapter of my life, I know that same faith will guide me and all of us towards a brighter, more just future. Thank you.
And now, please welcome to the stage your co-hosts for today's program, NYC Now host Janae Pierre and WNYC Morning Edition host Michael Hill.
Make some noise.
Welcome to MLK 25, a burning house, MLK and the American Experiment.
We have so much to share today in honor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
This is our 19th annual MLK celebration. In addition to political scientists, historians, authors, and activists, we have big musical performances. You will want to enjoy those. And a sermon or two.
Or two. Wouldn't be a Sunday without two. Today's program is all about amplifying the life, activism, and impact of a man who literally put it all on the line for justice, civil rights, and the pursuit of the beloved community.
Indeed, Dr. King had a supporting cast of hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions. Share your experience of today's program by using the hashtag WNYCMLK, and please enjoy today's program.
Please enjoy, yes.
in January of 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC, and the Southern Leadership Conference, SCLC, were engaged in peaceful demonstrations for voting rights in Selma, Alabama. Mass arrests of the protesters gave way to violence when activist Jimmy Lee Jackson died after being beaten and shot by a state trooper. Sunday, March 7th, 1965, is infamously known as Bloody Sunday. This demonstration marked the first of 3 attempts to march from Selma, Alabama to the state capital of Montgomery. State troopers attacked demonstrators amidst cheers from white residents. King would lead a second symbolic march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, later called Turnaround Tuesday. When law enforcers instructed the marchers to stop, King instructed all to kneel in prayer. King would lead thousands on March 3rd, another march, 54 miles over 5 days. Once arriving at the state capitol, King delivered these words: "There never was a moment in American history more honorable and more inspiring than the pilgrimage of clergymen and laymen of every race and faith, pouring into Selma to face danger at the side of its embattled Negroes." 60 years later, we honor the March on Selma that resulted in an opportunity for President Lyndon Baines Johnson to engage Congress on voting rights and get the Voting Rights Act passed speech.
Hello, Apollo. It is such an honor to be welcomed back to the Apollo stage. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. First of all, give yourselves a round of applause for coming out in the snow. The fact that the tickets were free probably made it easier to say, no, I'm not going to go ahead and spend $30. And so let's hear it for yourselves for the commitment. I also want to send the love back to Brenda Williams. I didn't think she was going to mention me when she was out here, and that was extremely generous. But, you know, the people who work behind the scenes never get the glory, and Brenda has just been a force for 28 years at WNYC for programming, for justice, for treating her colleagues with respect and love. Brenda, all the admiration and good luck in that next chapter. On my radio show, in conjunction with WNYC Centennial, we're doing a series called 100 Years of 100 Things. And we're framing the conversation that we're about to have in the context of that. We're up to thing number 60 in that series, which we'll call Almost 100 Years of Martin Luther King and his quest for freedom in New York City and elsewhere in the North. I'll say that again. Martin Luther King and his quest for freedom in New York City and elsewhere in the North. And I say almost 100 years because Dr. King was born on January 15th, 1929, and he would have turned 96 this past Wednesday. So we'll take the liberty of a little bit of rounding to include this in the series. With me on the stage will be, come on out.
Joining Brian on the stage, A Burning House, MLK, and the American Experiment, please welcome Jackie Lewis, author of Fierce Love, and Distinguished Professor of Political Science at Brooklyn College of CUNY, Dr. Jean Theo-Harris.
Right, and a little more about them. As her Brooklyn College bio page states, Dr. Jean Theo-Harris is the author or co-author of 11 books and numerous articles on the civil rights and Black Power movements and the contemporary politics of race in the United States. Two of them will be most relevant to this conversation, one that came out in 2003 called Freedom North, Black Freedom Struggles Outside the South, 1940 to 1980, and a brand new one that is just about to be released called King of the North, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Life of Struggle Outside the South. And the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis, senior minister at the Middle Collegiate Church in the East Village, which persists as a congregation and is coming back as a building after it was destroyed by fire in the year 2020. Something Reverend Dr. Lewis will describe from her bio is being an 8-year-old kid in Chicago when Dr. King was killed and how pivotal that was to shaping the direction in her life. Reverend Dr. Lewis is also author of the book, which just the title will indicate how much she sees herself following in Dr. King's footsteps since 1968. It's called Fierce Love, a bold path to ferocious courage and rule-breaking kindness that can heal the world. Fierce Love came out in 2021. So audience, please welcome Dr. Theo-Harris and Reverend Dr. Lewis. So let's begin in 1927. That's almost 100 years ago. King is still 2 years from being born. But Dr. Theo-Harris, you wrote an op-ed in the New York Times a few years ago that began with Donald Trump's father being arrested at a Klan rally in the year 1927. Where was that Klan rally?
It was right here in New York City. And so I think remembering both Fred Trump, but the presence of what some people talk about as the sort of second wave of the Klan in the early 20th century really has its heart in the North, in the Midwest, in the West Coast, and Fred Trump is part of that, and their signature accomplishment is the 1924 Immigration Act that puts quotas on immigration. What was
Fred Trump arrested for, and what was a Klan rally doing in New York?
He was arrested for, I think, a disorderly charge. I think part of what the Klan was doing was making its presence and visibility known. And I think we want to think about Fred Trump not just in that moment, but we fast forward 50 years and the Department of Justice files suit against the Trump organization for systematically discriminating against black tenants and taking federal money to do so, right? Much of the housing that that Fred Trump builds in the post-war period is with federal money, and yet it largely excludes black residents, and we can think about places, particularly in Brooklyn, where that happened.
Now I'm going to jump ahead to when Martin Luther King was 21 years old, so that would have been 1950. Mm-hmm. You've written about the story of King and some friends being refused service in a bar, but it wasn't in Georgia or Mississippi or Alabama, but in New Jersey.
Right.
Can you tell a little of that story?
So I'll remember Dr. King graduates from Morehouse and then he goes to Crozier Seminary in Pennsylvania. And him and some friends have gone out to this bar in Maple Shade, New Jersey, and they asked to be served and they are refused. New Jersey had recently passed an anti-discrimination law, and so King and his friends cite that law, and the owner kicks them out at gunpoint. But I think a second aspect of this experience that is so pivotal to young Dr. King is the fact that some University of Pennsylvania law students go and test the place because King and his friends are going to file a lawsuit based on that anti-discrimination law. And so these white University of Pennsylvania law students test the place, they are served, and then when push comes to shove, they back down. And so I think Dr. King has both a a learning experience, many learning experiences, both in Pennsylvania and Boston, of segregation being a national problem, not a regional problem, but also the kind of limits of Northern liberalism at home. These students decide it's not good for their career, and so they won't testify, and the case doesn't go anywhere.
Your Times article that began with the arrest of Fred Trump was headlined "How New York City Became the Capital of the Jim Crow North."
Right.
Why do you give New York that inglorious distinction? And I'll bite, in your opinion, how did it earn that title?
So I think we want to remember that in many ways the tools of school segregation began in places like New York City and Boston before the Civil War. The tools of excluding black voters began in states like New York State before the Civil War. So part of what we're writing about in that piece and thinking about the Jim Crow North is thinking about the way that the North actually leads and in many ways develops the tools that the South will then expand and perfect. I also want to jump ahead to Dr. King. Dr. King will call New York City's segregated schools the most difficult in the country.
Why?
Why? Because the segregation is so pervasive and black activists, including Dr. King, are constantly being gaslit and said, oh, no, we don't have segregation here. That's a problem in Alabama. That's a problem in Mississippi. Or you're being unreasonable. One other nerdy fact for everyone, the biggest civil rights demonstration in the country is not the March on Washington in '63. It's the New York City school boycott 6 months later in February of 1964, where almost 500,000 students and teachers stay out of school. This is 10 years after the Brown decision because New York City still does not even have a plan for school desegregation, much less school desegregation. The New York Times calls that school boycott unreasonable, reckless, and violent. Martin Luther King writes a piece 2 months later in the Amsterdam News celebrating the school boycott, talking about it as a harvest of conditions that had not been addressed, and how the school boycott is a good tool for exposing, as he writes, the thin veneer of Northern racial self-satisfaction.
And you've written about King being focused a lot on the issue of policing
Absolutely.
in the North. For example, after the police killing of 15-year-old Jimmy Powell, which led to a 6-day uprising here in Harlem.
Yep.
What was King's involvement in that?
So Mayor Wagner then invites Dr. King to the city. He thinks that he's going to bring Dr. King to quiet people down. That is not the case. King has a series of meetings with Mayor Wagner where he insists that the officer should be disciplined, that they need a real, robust civilian complaint review board, that they need jobs for young people, that they need real school desegregation. Wagner rejects all of it. And I think this is a really pivotal moment as we get to the holiday tomorrow, because Dr. King experienced the ways that Northern officials, Northern liberals, rejected him when he called out their own segregation, but 5 months later, when he gets the Nobel Prize, Mayor Wagner celebrates him, gives him a big party at the Ritz, but doesn't listen to anything he's saying regarding New York City.
Next stop on the timeline, 1968. And now we pivot to our other guest. Dr. King is, of course, assassinated in Memphis, obviously in the South. But Reverend Doctor, not yet a Reverend Doctor, Jackie Lewis, you are an 8-year-old in Chicago. Would you give us some more detail of where you were and what your life was like at that time, and describe a little of what you experienced after April 4th, 1968?
April 4th, 1968, I'm a 5th grader. I've skipped a grade. My mom and dad have raised us that education is the thing that's going to save us. They've exposed us to Dr. King's teachings, and I'm on a field trip out in the suburbs And we get back on the bus to go back home, and my teacher, Dr. Smith, who grew up in Mississippi with my mother and her sister, is devastated. He's crushed, he's crying, and we find out that Dr. King is dead. And, you know, Chicago was a place where lots of African Americans had immigrated to the north, and so it was like Mississippi North, and it erupted in fear and violence. Shooting, fires were burning. It was a really sad and scary day. And those fires frightened me as a child. I hid under my bed from fire and gun shooting. But I felt that day that I was called to be a drum major for peace. It's a very personal sense of calling. And I tell that story now, as we know the whole nation's gonna quote a lot of Dr. King stuff, but especially I Have a Dream. They're gonna nicen him up. They're going to remember that he
Wow. Every year in our WNYC Apollo Theater event, we try to take an aspect of Dr. King's life or work that may or may not be well known and build conversations around it. Our theme this year, as has been stated, is A Burning House, MLK and the American Experiment. That burning house quote comes from a conversation Dr. King once had with Harry Belafonte. And coincidentally, I see that just last month, you wrote an article in the Amsterdam News called Fierce Love in These Hot Mess Times, Let Us Love Our Nation. That was largely about that exchange with Belafonte and how you think it's been misunderstood. So would you like to read or paraphrase the quote? I have the quote here if you want me to just read through it, but you can just describe it and talk about how you think it's been misunderstood.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's such an unpublished and misunderstood quote. In fact, Jean and I were talking about this a little bit earlier today. I don't think that Dr. King wanted to be a firefighter, but he understood and was afraid, he said, I fear, to his friend, Harry Belafonte, that I've integrated my people into a house on fire. Have y'all heard that quote? I've integrated my people into a house of fire. So his criticism was about America, that America was then a house on fire. And surely he was alluding to the crosses being burned all across the South, again in the name of the white church, the Klan, white supremacy, but on fire with bigotry, on fire with injustice, on fire with a determined sense of keeping people out, not just black people, but black people outside of justice, Chinese people outside of justice, Jewish people outside of justice, Latinx poor farmers outside of justice, that America was built to prop up whiteness. Y'all know when I say whiteness, I mean white supremacy, white ideology. And that inside that, all of our freedoms burn. Our justice burns. We can't make it, we can't survive. A house on fire, he thought he was integrating us into. And Harry asked him, what shall we do? So King wasn't saying don't integrate. But when Harry asked him what to do, he said, we have to become firefighters. Now today, I have an imagination about that as we watch California burn, right? And as we watch Gaza burn, and as we watch Ukraine, burn, and Congo and Haiti burn, wars burn, right? What does it mean for us to become firefighters, friends? And as we go into this holiday, observing Dr. King's work, I think the only thing that can dismantle hatred is love. The only thing that can break through the darkness is light. The only thing that can quench these fires is the fiercest love of all.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, y'all, let's stop acting like love is some nammy-pammy, wimpy ethic. Love made people walk almost a year to work to get the right to ride on the bus. Love made teenagers sit at lunchroom counters and get their head bashed in with ketchup bottles and napkin boxes to desegregate that moment. Love makes people lay down their comfort. Love made people do die-ins in the street to protest the onslaught of Black death at the hand of the police. Love makes people go marching in the freezing cold so there can be a free Palestine and the hostages can be released. What I'm trying to tell you is love is inconvenient, okay? Fierce love is courageous. And the most important thing is love cannot bear lies. Love cannot bear lies. Some Christians get it wrong because, you know, Paul's love bears all things, believes all things, and hope, la, 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 la. You know, love demands truth because the truth is what will set us free.
This has been mostly a history segment, but not to ignore the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
In our last 3 minutes before they come out here with a hook. Here we are at this strange confluence of events, Dr. King's holiday and the Trump inauguration. The easy thing to say is King would have been a staunch member of the resistance even after the re-election. More complicated might be to say King was an advocate for poor and working class people across the lines of color, and working class people have increasingly been trending Republican, including 30% of Black men under 45 voting for Trump this time, mostly for economic reasons, twice as much as last election, while upper income people trend increasingly Democratic. Both Joe Biden and Steve Bannon have railed against the tech industrial oligarchy in the last week. Also, I have plenty of Black callers to my show who are skeptical of mass immigration because low-income immigrants have always been advantaged ahead of them from whatever ethnic group by employers and government policy for rising into prosperity. So do you have a theory on what Dr. King would be saying today, each of you, in about literally 1 minute each, no more than that? Or is it so hypothetical that it's just a stupid question?
I think Dr. King would also remind us of the fire closer to home, which is the politics and policies of New York City. The fact that we just had the governor with the mayor decide to put more police on the subway as opposed to dealing with people's actual needs. I think one of the things that makes Dr. King so courageous is that he called out Northern liberals to be liberal at home. He protested both the Democrats and the Republicans. And so I think that he would be asking us to both look at Washington and look at New York City.
That's really good, Dean. I'm glad you went first. Two things. One is King might reiterate love correcting everything that stands against love. And I'm paraphrasing that, so I'm going to say justice correcting everything that stands against love. That we can't be talking about love and there's injustice. When we're protesting, we say no justice, no peace. I'm going to say no justice, no love, no justice. They go together. And justice is clear. We know what it looks like, so let's not pretend. Let's do that. And I think the second thing is that he would remind us that we're inextricably connected. You know, that was his way of talking about Ubuntu. I am human because you're human. on the planet. We're inextricably connected, woven in a garment of humanity. I can't be fully who I am until you're fully who you are. Even the Republicans, damn it, we're connected to them too. But I think because we're connected, we're responsible to tell each other the truth. So I'm going to go back there. We don't pretend like this craziness is truth. We don't pretend like it's not crazy. We don't pretend like the injustice is just. We don't pretend like the bigotry is good. We don't pretend like the economy works. It does not work. So we have to be honest about it and call each other into account to build a just society.
Dr. Theo Harris will be back on stage with Michael Hill for a one-on-one. For now, please thank Dr. Theo Harris and Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis.
Please remember to share your experiences for those of you all here in the Apollo and watching at home. Share your experiences and your thoughts using the hashtag WNYC MLK. MLK really understood the power of music to bring people together. And so now, music. Please welcome to the Apollo, all the way from Harlem, under the direction of Dr. Tyrone Clinton, Jr., who sang in the same glee club as Martin Luther King did, years apart, and the Unsung Collective with accompanist Byron Buford. Give it up for Unsung Collective.
Hold up, come unto me and rest. Lay down, O weary one, lay down thy hand upon my breast. I came to Jesus as I was, weary and worn and sick. I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. Sweet home, sweet home, sweet home, my Lord, Lord, if I get sweet
Obama Guido singing Sweet Home by Uzi Brown Jr. This is A Burning House, MLK and the American Experiment. Up next, we welcome to the stage the Executive Artistic Director of the National Black Theater Incorporated. Please welcome Jonathan McCrory.
Hello, family. How are we doing today? It's important to know who our family is, especially today. In 2025, it will be a moment of choosing where you invest your time and where you give your grace, where you allow for your love to flow. Today, I am supposed to talk to you about agape love, a love that builds, that bellows, that grows in understanding. A love that now, as she is burning us literally because we haven't cared for her. Now, what if the darkness that we actually even have a conversation with is, how are we, citizens of this world, citizens held in Mother Earth's womb, right? How are we nurturing her space? Think about the mother when they're in the birthing process, when they're pregnant. We think about the food that they eat. We get a doula to make sure that they are taken care of. We talk about the different physicians that they need. Now I've gone a little bit off track. I'm going to go back on my script. But I want us to meditate on this very radical and necessary act of what womb are we in right now? Because possibilities are forged in a womb. You are birthing yourself every single day you wake up. You are birthing yourself even right now, allowing your synapses to be in relationship to a new idea, to a new concept, to new people, to a relationship of being next to each other. If you can imagine, a couple of years ago, this idea would never be possible. A couple of years ago, this would have been a radical, dangerous act. But right now, we stand, we find, we forge, we found innovation inside of what was called darkness to create possibilities of gathering. What gathering can we do inside of darkness, my friends? What gathering can we forge? So we're going to go back to agape love. For those who may need it, agape love is selfless, unconditional, and sacrificial type of love that often describes the highest form of love. Whenever I speak to somebody, I think of the 4 elements of who they are. There's your mental self, your physical self, your emotional self, and is guided by the spiritual self. My goal is to speak to all 4, but I know that you will only give me one. You are conditioned by one of those selves. Mainly, most of us were never conditioned by the spiritual. We're conditioned by the emotional self, the physical self, the mental self. Just think about yourself and think about what you were trained to do. Were you trained that you were always the smart one in the room? Were you trained that you were always the beautiful one in the room? We were trained to be guided by the emotions that you were able to transcribe. And it's not until the Spirit comes in that we get the purest form of that agape love. So maybe the quest that we need to invite ourselves in 2025 and beyond is, where do we allow for the Spirit to invade the mind, invade the body, invade the emotion, and allow for the nervous system to be brought down to a place where we can be communal with one another. Because this is a community. This is communion. This is where the body and the blood and the spirit are coming together to create a beautiful montage of possibility for something real to show up. There are words that MLK says, Martin Luther King Jr. says, that I will lift up in this moment about agape love. Agape is not a weak, passive love. It is love in action. Agape is a willingness to go to any lengths to restore community. It is a willingness to forgive, not 7 times, but 70 times. 7 to restore community. If I respond to hate with a reciprocal hate, I do nothing but intensify the cleavage of that broken community. I can only close the gap in a broken community by meeting hate with love. When will you choose love over hate? When will you choose love as a vestige of the ability to hold someone you do not know, a concept that you are not familiar of, a body that doesn't feel normal to you, right? And come in conversation with the glory that we are all just human. There was this beautiful moment, and I'll say this on Instagram, where a teacher was trying to give a concept, and they were trying to uplift MLK, and they had this beautiful moment around M&Ms. I don't know if anyone saw this. It went viral. And she had all her students eat the M&Ms. And she was like, she gave everyone an M&M. She had just the red ones and the green ones. And she said, everyone who has red M&Ms, they are better than the ones in green. And the kids started crying. They're like, I'm still good. I'm not better, da, da, da. And then she said, I want everyone to bite in the inside of the M&M. And then she asked the question, is anyone different in the inside? Is anyone less tastier on the inside? So if we are all but just a shell of some idea. But in the inside is a glory that is beautifully delicious. How can we get past the shell of our divisive society and get to the glorious, delicious inside that will allow for me to love you, for you to love her, for her to love him, for him to love them, for they to love whoever they choose. Claim the space of agape love in 2025, please. The systems that are around us are going to try to erode that very notion. And if you, this room, this one singular room, holds true to agape love, like a butterfly, we can affect the world. Delicate to the touch, but dynamic in our choices.
And now let's welcome back to the stage WNYC's Michael Hill and scholar, author, Dr. Jean Theo Harris.
Dr. Harris, we have a lot to talk about.
We sure do.
Oh, a whole lot. The title of your book, your latest publication, King of the North. That says a whole lot.
Yeah.
Why this title?
So it's coming out in March, so just so people know, it's not out yet. It was a journey for me because about 18 years ago, I started doing research on the Black freedom struggle in LA before Watts. And I kept finding Dr. King in LA protesting school segregation, protesting police brutality, protesting housing segregation before Watts. But that's not the story we get. We get that Dr. King discovers the North after Watts. And so that was kind of the beginning of this journey where then everywhere I looked, I found him. And not just in 1966, but in 1956, right? And as we were talking about in the earlier panel, it comes out of his own experiences coming of age as a student at Crozier and at BU.
Now, you say that, and you make this clear, that King considered New York City the center of the struggle for Black equality.
Yeah.
Let's go through this.
Yeah.
Police brutality and policing.
Yes. So I want to tell a story. This is 1958. People may be familiar with this picture of Dr. King being abused by the police where he's half Nelsoned on the police station counter. This gets taken in Montgomery. He's gone to see his friend Ralph Abernathy in court, and a photographer sees the police abusing King. And this is one of the first times that we know of that a photo of police brutality makes it into the mainstream news. And so people, Black people across the country are sickened and, of course, also are in community with what has happened to Dr. King. About 2 weeks later, he comes here to New York City, and just down the street, in front of the Hotel Teresa, he speaks at an evening rally, and he highlights two crucial issues for the movement, not just in Montgomery, but in New York, which are police brutality and school segregation. And that night, he shares his own experiences a couple weeks earlier. And Dr. King has numerous experiences of police brutality and police overreach. And so one of the things that I think we can see him that night down the street, but then carrying forward over the next decade, is making common cause, and people in New York, in Chicago, and LA making common cause with King because of those shared experiences of police brutality and police overreach.
Jobs and multiracial unions?
So Dr. King calls 1199, and I bet most of us know 1199, right? 1199 in the House, his favorite union. And Dr. King is introduced to 1199 in 1959. 1199 is started by Jewish pharmacy workers, but almost from the beginning is interracial, and in the mid-50s decides it's going to organize the lowest paid hospital workers, which are predominantly black women and Puerto Rican women who are working as orderlies in hospitals in New York City. But most of those hospitals are classified as private or charity, so those women do not have the right to a union. And so they are going to have to strike to even get recognition. And Dr. King meets with them, and he says, count me in, call on me. And so he supports that strike in 59. He supports they strike again in 62. Just another fun fact, the only union that Malcolm X speaks in front of is 1199 in 62, because Malcolm and Dr. King admire Leon Davis, who is the head of 1199 at that point. He goes to jail because he breaks an anti-strike injunction. And it is in 1199 and his work with 1199 that Dr. King really starts to see the connections between the experiences of Black New Yorkers and Puerto Rican New Yorkers, and that multiracial vision, again, that we often associate with his last years actually begins much, much earlier.
What about King's work when it comes to calling out injustices in New York City?
Right. So over and over and over, we have King in this city calling for a liberalism that doesn't just rise up in anger about something happening in Alabama or something happening in Mississippi, but a liberalism that calls out when somebody is denied a job or denied housing right here in New York. And over, we see Dr. King saying, variations of this same thing, which is a liberalism that's liberal at home. And one of his favorite, you and I were talking about this beforehand, Dr. King has been trapped in I Have a Dream. But one of his favorite phrases in the early 60s is all here now. We want all of our rights, we want them here, and here is anywhere in the country, and we want them now. And so the all here and now is a different, and he's asked about this over and over because he says it so much. What do you mean? And he's willing to give a timeline for when rights are going to happen in the South, but interestingly, he's not willing to give a timeline for when they're going to happen in the North.
Dr. Theo Harris, he called out the injustice and indignity of school-age children in New York City, mainly Black and Puerto Rican school-age children.
Right. I think a couple of things. The first is, and we heard both from Reverend Lewis and from Jonathan McCrory, the notion that the love that goes to all lengths. And I think sometimes we forget that when Dr. King is talking about nonviolent resistance, we're not just talking about bus boycotts, we're not just talking about sit-ins at lunch counters, we're talking about school boycotts, we're talking about rent strikes, we're talking about disrupting city life. So the all lengths, right? That injustice, Dr. King will say over and over, is comfortable to too many people, and that the task of love is to make us uncomfortable with injustice.
Now, there was a boycott that he encouraged, a school boycott in New York City in 1964?
Yes.
Because of this?
Yes. So the school boycott here in New York, there was one in Chicago, there was one in Boston, and King stands resolutely with those school boycotts, in part because one of the issues in a place like New York is they're saying, oh, we like the Brown decision, we just think it doesn't apply to us. And then the superintendent of New York schools at the time says, you know what, we're not going to call this, he instructs other school administrators, don't say segregation, say separation. That's what we have here. We have separation. And so part of what Dr. King and part of what Black activists in New York by 1964 are responding to is that what we would call today gaslighting, right? This over and over, we don't have segregation here, and yet schools are dramatically overcrowded in Black and Puerto Rican neighborhoods. They get less resources, they get less experienced teachers, and Black and Puerto Rican teachers find it very difficult to get hired, right? So what segregation looks like in New York City schools is both in terms of students and in terms of who gets hired.
You know, I know you're passionate about this, and a lot of people may not know the exact role that Coretta Scott King played in the activism of Martin Luther King Jr.
Right. So the first thing to know is that Coretta Scott King was more political than Martin Luther King when they meet. So Coretta Scott goes to Antioch College, and at Antioch College, she both has similar experiences of the segregation of the North, and she is introduced to the Progressive Party. And if people know, the Progressive Party runs a third-party candidate in 1948 to both challenge both the Democrats and Republicans around segregation and around Cold War militarism. And Coretta Scott King, like Paul Robeson, like many other sort of Black radicals, right, will support that Progressive Party. So she meets Bayard Rustin, she meets Paul Robeson before she meets Martin Luther King. Okay, so she's coming to the table with a vision of anti-racism, anti-poverty, anti-militarism. Coretta Scott brings that to the table. And then, just to give you one more moment, so they get married in 1953. And as we know, the Montgomery bus boycott starts in 1955, and 6 weeks in, the King's house is bombed. And Coretta and baby Yolanda are in the house. And luckily, she moves fast and gets them out so they do not get hurt. But as you might imagine, Martin's dad and her dad come down and they say, you need to get out of here. You need to get her and that baby out of here. And she says, no. I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. And people talk about Coretta Scott King as being beyond steel. And that in many ways, we need to understand that what Dr. King is able to do is in part because of what Coretta Scott King, that beyond steel nature of Coretta Scott King.
Our guest is Dr. Jean Theo-Harris, the title of the book, King of the North. Dr. Theo-Harris, thank you.
Thank you so much.
In August of 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Months earlier, he delivered a speech to a joint session of Congress, informing lawmakers of his intent to get this legislation through. He noted two things. First, the sole purpose of the act is to correct a wrong. Second, he promised swift and immediate action to ensure the right to vote. He concluded, the time for waiting is gone.
The stories of our nation and of the American Negro are like two great rivers, welling up from that tiny Jamestown spring. They flow through the centuries along divided channels. When pioneers subdued a continent to the need of man, they did not tame it for the Negro. When the Liberty Bell rang out in Philadelphia, it did not toll for the Negro. When Andrew Jackson threw open the doors of democracy, they did not open for the Negro. It was only at Appomattox a century ago that an American victory was also a Negro victory. And the two rivers, one shining with promise, the other dark-stained with oppression, began to move toward one another. Yet for almost a century, the promise of that day was not fulfilled. Today is a towering and certain mark that in this generation that promise will be kept. In our time, the two currents will finally mingle and rush as one great stream across the uncertain and the marvelous years of the America that is yet to come.
This is A Burning House, MLK and the American Experiment. Please remember to share your experiences and insights with today's official event hashtag WNYC MLK. And now welcome back to the stage, NYC Now host, Janae Pierre. She'll be joined by Christina Greer, an associate professor of political science at Fordham University, and Rashad Robinson, social justice leader, strategist, writer, producer, and the former president of Color of Change.
You gotta do that, gotta do that. All right, Christina, Rashad, thank you both so much for joining me on the stage today here at the Apollo Theater. We are here to discuss how Dr. King engaged power and how we can do the same today. So let's start the conversation by thinking about Dr. King's definition of power. Christina, how did Dr. King look at his own power and the power of Black Americans to inspire and initiate change?
Well, thank you for having me. I think we should start thinking about power and empowerment, because Dr. King not only believed in educating others about their individual power, but empowering not just individuals, but a collective, groups of people, not just in the U.S. South, but across the United States and also across the globe. So we have to remember that Dr. King, one, when he was speaking about power, he's known as a domestic terrorist. The sort of rebranding of Dr. King is a much later American phenomenon. There were many people who did not understand or appreciate how he wanted to empower not just Black people, but poor people. Because we have to remember, when he's assassinated, he didn't die of old age, he didn't die of cancer, he was assassinated on U.S. soil. He actually was trying to mobilize poor people writ large, not just in the United States, but to help them think about the struggles of those in the South, in the United States, and abroad.
Yeah.
So his definition of power was expansive and inclusive.
Yeah. Today's theme is shaped around Dr. King's remarks of America being a burning house, and how his efforts to bring more people into that burning house, those people being recognized and treated as full citizens of this country. How much of that power was dependent on white America and, you know, their moral compass that points in the direction of equality, justice, and a true democracy?
Well, I did quite a bit of reading, not the popular readings of Dr. King, getting ready for today, and the lives, legacies, and histories of white America and Black America are inextricably linked. And so, as my grandmother would say, it's a sin and a shame that so much of Black history is not taught, because the legacy of Blackness in this country, the trials, tribulations, and the triumphs, are also linked to white America as well. We don't exist in a vacuum. We didn't just drop here from outer space. And so for King to understand, our advancement is not just dependent on, but it has to be in conjunction with a certain Enlightenment understanding from white America if we're ever to progress, since we are all Americans. Mm-hmm. Some have more of a mandatory prefix than others, but our lives and our livelihoods are intertwined.
Yeah. You know, we all know Dr. King as an inspirational leader, a fighter, a speaker, and so much more. But I'd like to focus now on Dr. King's role as a strategist, right? Now, Rashad, what kinds of strategies might Dr. King find most effective in a political moment like the one we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we think about the moment we are in right now, where so much of what is happening is not just a result of, let's say, a single man who might be inaugurated tomorrow, who's going to be inaugurated tomorrow. It is about a network of enablers. It is a network of enablers, corporate America, media, all the ways in which so many are profiting off of what is happening. And as long as the profit incentives are there, we will continue to see folks that shouldn't disappoint us will disappoint us, because we shouldn't be disappointed by the fact that racism is deeply profitable in America. And as long as that is the case, I think if we think about sort of the work that Dr. King did, and I think sometimes we can become almost enamored by the public display of, like, let's say, a march, right? And then we see people trying to recreate marches every so often over and over again, but not thinking about the power dynamic behind the march. It wasn't simply that people marched, they marched to places and on people for which marching actually meant something. So, when folks did the March on Washington, that march was incredibly important because that was a time in which marching on Congress actually meant something. People didn't travel the same way. People were actually in DC. You were actually facing down power. Today, we actually need to be thinking about who we march on, and that has to look different. We should be taking our marches to ExxonMobil, to Bank of America, to all the institutions that every single day profit off of our inhumanity, who play in our face constantly, day in and day out. Because they're not nervous about disappointing us, it actually doesn't necessarily matter day in and day out what we do. So I fundamentally believe that Dr. King would be focusing on the infrastructure and the institutions that continue to put us in harm's way every single day.
Now, Christina, as an author and a professor, I know you're quite familiar with those individuals who are bearers to King's legacy. I'm thinking particularly about Black women in the South, right? Will you tell us about some of the ones who really studied his strategic playbook as we continue talking about his strategies here and how they put it to good use?
Right. So I just published a book called How to Build a Democracy, from Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams. And I'm thinking about this idea of inside and outside politics. So people who do more activist politics and people who do more traditional policy-making of politics. So a Fannie Lou Hamer and a Barbara Jordan. I argue that Black women are the keepers of not just the Democratic Party, but also democracy writ large. Yeah. And so there are many Black women that we've heard of, or we should have heard of, in our studies, whether it's Septima Clark or Ella Baker or Fannie Lou Hamer. But we can't forget about the hundreds, if not thousands, of Black women who were domestics at the time, excluded from Social Security and the New Deal, women who were teachers and nurses. I mean, obviously we think about Rosa Parks, but Rosa Parks is to raise.
For those feeling that way today, how do you imagine Dr. King would advise them on what to do to engage with their power?
Every single day we have an opportunity to get involved, to join in something bigger than ourselves. I don't think change and opportunity is a story of the past, but it's a phenomena of the present, and it's a phenomena of the future. And if we don't take an opportunity to actually get involved in something bigger, then we are sort of missing that chance. In fact, what's happening tomorrow is an invitation for all of us to do more. It is an invitation for us to be able to raise our voices in new ways, to use our money in different ways, to think about our vote in different ways, to have conversations in our communities and our neighborhoods in different ways. Our opponents are welcoming us to an invitation to do something more and something bigger. What's happening in terms of the backlash and so much of what we're seeing and so much of the progress is a direct result of what we're winning. In 2020, right, racial justice in many ways became a majoritarian issue, right? When many people thought the best that could be done was clap outside of windows and uplift investigative journalism, it was racial justice that drove people to the streets. It was racial justice that led to the uptick in voter registration. It was racial justice that moved people to action, forced corporations to make all sorts of statements that they never had any intention of delivering on, but they actually made it because people were standing up and speaking out. And what they did was they tried to wait us out, because the tide went this way and then they wanted to wait us out. And so the question is for all of us is, how do we consistently build so they can't wait us out anymore? And so we can never mistake presence for power. Presence is visibility, awareness, retweets, shout outs from the stage. Presence is good, but when we mistake presence for power, we can think that we've done something that we haven't actually done. We can think that a black president means that we're post-racial. We can think that the internet's stopping because one of our celebrities announces a new album. That's great. But America can love, celebrate, and monetize black culture and hate black people at the same time. And those two things don't actually have to be in conflict. And so as long as we recognize that power is the ability to change the rules, sometimes it's the written rules and other times it's the unwritten rules. And we do not ever change the rules without people in motion building power and forcing people to do things that they don't otherwise want to do. That is our opportunity, and tomorrow is our invitation to do something more.
I love you. Would you like to piggyback on that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll just say is this. I oftentimes paraphrase LBJ, my favorite president, because he said, if you can essentially convince the poorest white man that he's better than the Negro, then you can pick his pockets all day long. And so, you know, when you said Dr. King helped mobilize black and brown people, he also mobilized poor white people. And the backlash has been to convince poor white people that they're better than these new immigrants, that they're better than these old immigrants, that the competition isn't the corporations that Rashad has laid out. The competition at why it is they're in that circumstance, it's not because of new immigrants, it's because of multinational corporations that are shipping their jobs overseas, and the list goes on and on.
You know, it's certainly no secret that we are in a time of extreme political polarization, and Rashad, I know you've thought a lot about the role that tech companies play, particularly those that run social media platforms, that they have played in creating and stoking this division that we all have in this country. Tell us how you've taken these companies on in efforts to hold them accountable.
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of the work around tech accountability, once again, involves the mobilization of everyday people and trying to figure out what are the solutions. It is not a mistake that our technology is unregulated. Self-regulated companies are unregulated companies. And so as a result, the tech companies can do basically whatever they want. And without rules and regulation, they will continue to put profit and growth over safety, integrity, and security, and profit off of every single aspect that goes wrong in our society, and all of the ways in which racism, misogyny, homophobia, all the things that sort of can drive likes and clicks and shares will be profitable for them. And so a lot of the work we have done, a lot of work I have done over the years, has really been focused at holding these companies accountable. I did co-lead the $7 billion boycott of Facebook, which was the largest boycott in American history. And one of the things we learned about during that boycott in 2020, the advertiser boycott, was just how much these companies have insulated themselves and how little we have gotten from Congress in terms of regulations. And so then I went up to Congress and I testified about reform and worked to try to actually push. And what I've come to realize is that once again, this goes back to what I've said about power, is that we will always lose in the back rooms if people are not lined up at the front door. And tomorrow on the stage, during the inauguration, we will see the CEOs of the biggest tech platforms sitting on that stage, essentially continuing to open up their platforms for the very worst aspects of our society. And we may think our use of Facebook, our use of Google, our use of all these platforms are free. They allow us to put our information, but you are the product. And so our cars are not safe because of the benevolence of the auto industry. Our food in our supermarkets is not safe because big agriculture has just decided they want to make things safe. It is safe because the American people at one point in time made the type of demands on its elected officials that could not be ignored. And those demands forced the Congress to act and actually deal with very rich and powerful people and create the level of consequences that were at the scale necessary to make sure that folks could no longer put us in harm's way. Because the technology that has so much potential to move us into the future is dragging us into the past. And every single day, tech platforms are actually operating in a way, and they will actually tell you that they believe that they do not have to follow civil rights law. In fact, there's something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which allows them to do all sorts of behavior and not be accountable, meaning they have the same type of immunity. In fact, the only folks that kind of have this deep level of immunity in our society is tech platforms and police. And both of them have been able to use that type of immunity to target black communities, to target brown communities, to target those who have been oppressed and exploited. And then they tell us a story, and I want to end here. They tell us a story to make us think that it's unfortunate, almost like a car accident. And this happens a lot with corporate America. This happens a lot with the sort of billionaire class, that they tell us a story about inequality that is unfortunate rather than unjust. And so when they tell us a story that is unfortunate rather than just, we end up thinking that we need charitable solutions to structural problems. So when they talk about technology, it's like, oh, maybe those black communities just need more literacy on tech, so they can actually do better and not actually share sort of misinformation that's being fed that way. The banks do the same thing. They'll say, maybe they need financial literacy to deal with institutions which have targeted, exploited, and redlined us from the beginning. They'll say black people are less likely to get a loan from the bank instead of saying banks are less likely to give loans from black people. And what you may think I'm saying is actually semantics, but I'm not saying anything that is just semantics. I am saying that when people say black people are less likely to get a loan from the bank, people say, what is wrong with black people? When people say banks are less likely to give loans to, when banks are less likely to give loans to black people, they'll say, what is wrong with the banks? We have to stop this kind of constant engagement of trying to fix black people and black communities and actually focusing on the systems and the structures which constantly exploit us, constantly profit from our pain, constantly put us in harm's way. Our communities are not vulnerable. We've been targeted, attacked, and exploited. And the tech companies are just another form of what's happened over and over and over again every single generation. And any time we've won, any time we have had progress, it is because people have been in motion, people have been built power, people have organized, and people have held not just those who are profiting, but all of those who are enabling accountable, letting no one get away with it and letting no one actually profit in the dark. You have to profit in the light, and we will hold you accountable for it.
Rashad Robinson is the author of the forthcoming book, From Presence to Power. And Christina Greer is the author of the recently released publication of How to Build a Democracy, from Fannie Lou Hamer and Barbara Jordan to Stacey Abrams. Thank you both so much for this conversation.
Let me say that even though I said we had made great strides on the question of segregation, the problem there is not yet solved. Now, it may be true that, as I said, figuratively speaking, old man segregation is on his deathbed, but history has proven that social systems have a great last-minute breathing power, and the guardians of the status quo are always on hand with their oxygen tents to keep the old order alive. And we have to face the fact that segregation is still with us. We still have it, and its hardcore farms in some parts of the South. And we still have it in its de facto expressions in almost every state and city of our union. But I'm absolutely convinced that if democracy is to live, segregation must die.
And now we welcome to the stage Irvin Weathersby Jr. He's the author of the book, In Open Contempt, Confronting White Supremacy in Art and Public Space.
First, I want to say it's such an honor to be here with you today to really give thanks and praise to Dr. King, especially as my book, In Open Contempt, Confronting White Supremacy in Art and Public Space, was released 12 days ago. So I'm really excited to be here. The book is an exploration of public art and monuments that have been raised, those that remain, and those that have yet to be erected. In 2017, I returned home to New Orleans to visit the site of 4 racist monuments that were removed in the city. And in the process, I take you around the world. I go to Europe, the Caribbean, all throughout the South, and even a Native American reservation in South Dakota, where I explore other works of art inspired by white supremacy. One site that I visited is on the National Mall, and it is the memorial and monument of Dr. King. As you can see here, this monument signifies significant progress in our country's history, right? It represents this moment where we are now able to talk about equity, right? But I want you to look at his face. I want you to see his expression, and I want you to think about what it suggests. He doesn't seem at ease. Rather, he seems caught deep in thought. What does this mean, you might ask? In my eyes, it seems to suggest that he wants us to continue working. He wants us to keep going. As a Morehouse man, this wasn't the first time that Dr. King inspired me. In the book, I describe his incredible influence on me, especially as I walk past his statue in front of King's Chapel on campus every day. As you can see on the right, there's a statue of Dr. King on campus, which sits at the highest place on campus, where he looks out over all of his students. And you can see on the other slide, that's me 22 years ago. Yeah, 22 years ago, I had locks then. And I'm standing there with my diploma, and I'm really overjoyed that I've accomplished what he set out before us, right? His finger forcefully pointed ahead seems to suggest that we have to keep going. And I did. Clearly, symbolism matters and extends beyond the statuary to include the names of our cities and our streets, especially when you consider every MLK Boulevard in America. When you traverse these strips, the sense of community is palpable.
I'm good on any MLK Boulevard. I'm good on any MLK Boulevard.
That line by Jay-Z, I think, completely embodies that feeling that you feel when you go down MLK, right? That feeling of returning home to your own. But, as you may know, these strips are often found in communities that still suffer from acute poverty. This was not Dr. King's dream. Above all his lofty goals, economic equality remains elusive. The wealth of white households is still 10 times more than that of its black counterparts, 10 times. So to honor Dr. King right, let's demand that we get more in terms of investments for our community. In Open Contempt is a book that challenges us to do just that, to reimagine what our society can be. Every street, every monument, every work of public art, we can control. We can demand a better control of our subconscious. So I challenge you to think about all of those places where you live, all of those monuments that you walk past every day. What are they suggesting about our future, about our present? And what can you do more? You can find an Open Contempt everywhere books are sold. Thank you, guys.
You all are so kind. Thank you all so much for being here. For our final musical performance, we're going to welcome the Fire Ensemble. Now, this ensemble is an intergenerational community pop-up choir that centers BIPOC and queer folk. It's led by its creative director, Troy Anthony. So please welcome to the stage of the Apollo, the Fire Ensemble.
Good afternoon. I'm so grateful to be here, celebrating, thinking about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Enjoyed listening to all of the speeches and the talks. This part of the program might be a little different. I know you're expecting like somebody to sing at you. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to ask you to sing with me and to lead you through a little bit of a meditation. I think something that is important to remember at this moment is that we have so much power in our bodies, and that there is no reason for us to be afraid. So if you would, if you have things in your lap, you can just put them down. You don't need them. You don't need your phones. Just be here with us. And I'd like to invite people to take the palms of their hands. You can put them on your lap, face up if you feel like you need a little energy. Or if you feel you need some groundedness, you can put them face down. You can close your eyes if you like, or soften your gaze. And I just want you to notice your breath. My good friend Jonathan McCrory talks a lot about breath. This piece is very much inspired by his unifying breaths technique. And you'll hear his voice in a little bit. I want to invite you to take a deep breath in and let it out. Another one, deep breath in and let it out. Another deep breath in. And let it out. You're doing great. One more deep breath in. And hold and let it out. I believe in what my breath can do. I believe in what my breath can do. Oh, I believe in what my breath can do. I'm breathing. Can you say that with me? I believe in what my breath can do.
I believe in what my
You can sing it. Say, I believe in what my breath can do.
I believe in what my
That's it. I believe in what my breath can do.
I believe in what my breath
I'm breathing.
I'm breathing.
Say it again. Say, I believe in what my breath can do. Do you believe that?
My breath can do.
I believe in what my breath can do.
I believe in what my breath
Oh, I believe in what my breath can do.
I believe in what my
Say,
breath
I'm breathing.
I'm breathing.
Great, everyone take a deep breath in. Say, in, 2, 3, 4, and let it out. 2, 3, 4. Again, breathe in. 2, 3, 4, and let it out. 2, 3. Now in for 2. Ready? Say in, 2, and breathe out for 2. Good. Breathe in for 2, and let it out for 2. Ready? And now breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Oh, say it with me. Say, I believe in what my breath can do. Oh, I believe in what my breath can do. Hey, I believe in what my breath can do. Say, I'm breathing. Oh, say it again. Say, I believe in what my breath can do. Hey, I believe in what my breath can do. Yeah, I believe in what my breath can do. Oh, I'm breathing. Oh, say breath is my anchor. Say breath is my anchor. Breath is my anchor. Oh, breath is my anchor. Say breath is my healer. Breath is my healer. Breath is my healer. Oh, breath is my healer. Say breath's a provider. Oh, breath's a provider. Breath's a provider. Oh, breath's a provider. Breath can do the impossible. 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 Say, I'm breathing. Oh, I'm breathing. Yeah, I'm breathing. I'm breathing. Hey, say, I'm breathing. I'm breathing. I'm breathing.
You are the cultivation of wisdom wrapped in flesh. You are the cultivation of possibility made real. And every breath that you get to take, something is shifting inside this planet. Futures are being written that we have never even known. And those futures that are being written is what I need, is what our future needs, is what our children need. I was crafted from that kind of technology. And my ancestors who were born into fortitude, also ancestors who were kings and queens. But those ancestors actually said, one day there would be a Jonathan, and I'm going to show up for him in this moment. I'm going to wrap my words with joy, and from that joy,
dance with me. Say, this is our war cry. Say, come on, sing it louder. Say, Thank you so much.
Troy, Anthony, and the Fire Ensemble. This is A Burning House, MLK and the American Experiment. I'm Terrence McKnight. I invite you to join me tomorrow on WQXR for a beautiful symphony of brotherhood, a musical journey in the life of MLK. That's at 8 p.m. on WQXR. Before we go tonight, I'd like to bring back our co-hosts, Janae Pierre and Michael Hill. See you all on the radio.
Thank you, Terrence.
Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show and the discussions on this MLK weekend. And everyone, on behalf of the Apollo, New York Public Radio, WNYC, and March On, thank you so much for coming out and honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Share your experiences and insights with today's official event, #WNYC MLK.
And tune in on Monday morning to the Brian Lehrer Show for a recap of today's program.
This has been a Burning House, MLK and the American Experience. Thank you.
Have a good one.